All right, guys, welcome back to Marlins 9. My name is Jeremiah Geiger, as always, and today I'm joined on the podcast with Alex Carver. Fish on the Farm over on Twitter covers the entire minor league system for the Marlins. And first off, Alex, I want to thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. You guys do a great job over here with not only covering the major league team, but now starting to cover the minor league side of things as well is awesome. So I'm always happy to talk minor league baseball, and I'm pleased to join you today to talk about the system.
Yeah, so this is definitely an episode I've been really excited to record, looking forward to record. What we're going to do to all the listeners out there, if you're watching it, down at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see the Fish on First top 30 rankings. It's just playing on the ticker down there. And we're going to go player by player, top 30. And Alex is going to give his insight. I'm going to give my insight into, break down each of these prospects in the Marlins farm system. So it's going to be a good episode, guys. And we're going to get going. If we're on YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube, you will be able to see my screen. I have the Fish on First website pulled up with their rankings. And really quick, I know a lot of you are probably wondering why you aren't going with MLB Pipeline, Jeremiah. The issue is MLB Pipeline's rankings are, quite frankly, outdated and terrible. You're going to have players that shouldn't be on there. Me and Alex will dive into that later. But Fish on First does a great job of a collective effort. Alex Carver, Eli Sussman, Kevin Burrell, all these guys that have been on the podcast of creating these 30 players, 30 prospects of the minor league system for the Marlins. So we're going to use their website. So first off, Alex, we're going to start with the obvious, kind of the top three guys, all pitchers for the Marlins: Thomas White, Noble Meyer, and then Max Meyer. Take it away.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, honestly, in prospect rankings, I don't think anybody is wrong. It's just what you see, right? So that's why, like I told you before we started, Jeremiah, people were asking us like this preseason, like, why is your top 30 not updated yet? And this and that, because there were guys that were in there that were traded and all this other stuff. We kind of wanted to get a real look at what these guys looked like in spring training before we committed to, okay, here's our actual rankings. So we did an initial preseason rankings, and then we did updated rankings just a little bit ago, which is what you're seeing on your screen, with Thomas White ranked number 1. So for Thomas, this guy, honestly, with him and Noble, it's like, it's interchangeable for different reasons with these two pitchers. Obviously, they're both out of the same draft. The Marlins get Noble with their first pick, and then they get Thomas White with their second pick. I think the reason that we're putting Thomas ahead of Noble mostly is because of his ability to mix pitches a little bit better, his ability to show more of all 3 to 4 of his pitches at a sooner time than Noble Meyer. So, and he's a lefty, so that goes into it as well. So I think with Thomas, the reason that he's ranked number 1 over Noble is because of his command and control over all of his stuff, his ability to mix his stuff a little bit better. And then the fact that he's a lefty, of course, from that higher arm angle, of course, that'll help him as well. So Thomas has been interesting to follow. Really heady guy, super mature guy. You see it happen. You saw it in the breakout game. You've seen him do it already this year with the Hammerheads. It looks really good, and we really like this guy. We like his release. We like his stuff all the way up to 97, 98. It's really, really good stuff from a guy that is really young in his career as a high school pitcher, lefty, tall guy that kind of has the levers a little bit more under control than Noble. So we go with Thomas over Noble for that regard, but both of these pitchers are very, very good. For Noble Meyer, I think definitely could reclaim that top spot, maybe at a future date. These guys are very good friends. These two pitchers that you see on your screen are very good friends, going through the same motions together, even though they pitch from opposite sides. So very, very cool. I love both of these pitchers. They have a great relationship together. And it's going to be very fun to watch them grow through the levels together as pitchers. Noble Meyer, man, that breaking ball that he has is sick. Thomas White's breaking pitch, which is like a slurvy slider curveball mix, is really awesome. To see Noble start to kind of incorporate changeup a little bit more here in his last couple of starts has been really good. One of his last starts, he had like 9 strikeouts, which was a career high. This is what you get excited about when you talk about the Marlins, is the ability to develop pitching. It's been like that for a while. the Marlins still have a lot of those same guys around to develop pitching, and these guys are already so far ahead as high school players, so they're both going to be very, very good. And then for Max Meyer, man, I mean, I know there's been a lot of discontent about him getting sent back down and a lot of those other things that happened with him early this season. I get it. I totally understand. I do get it. But really, this is a guy coming off of Tommy John, and you have to pay attention to that. And the Marlins want to protect this guy. So for Max Meyer, I think for him, what we've seen so far this year from Max Meyer is the ability to incorporate changeup a little bit more, which is very encouraging. That was his work in progress. I know during the preseason and during spring training, he was really, really focused on not just relying on his slider, which of course is his best pitch. So for him to start not relying on the slider as much and mix in his fastball and then the changeup, which is the work in progress pitch, a little bit more, is very, very encouraging. So for Max Meyer, I think that he will definitely be back with the Marlins at some point, but they are definitely limiting innings, and that's understandable for a guy coming off of Tommy John surgery. But for where he is right now, I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be good. There is question about, can he stick as a starter? Can he stick as or is he going to be a reliever? I think it really hinges on that changeup. How far can he get with the changeup is really what I think is going to be the differentiation between Max Meyer, the starter, and Max Meyer, the bullpen piece, which with that question mark being where it is and the injury in play as well, he's still coming back from it. He's in the minors right now. He's going 3-4 innings a start. He's innings limited, all of those other things. I really think that those three reasons that I just mentioned are the reason why we have him at number 3, whereas a few years ago he was at number 1. So we'll see how he comes back. I definitely think you'll see Max Meyer back with the Marlins at some point this year, maybe out of the bullpen. Maybe you'll see him out of the bullpen. I'm not really sure what the direction is going to be. What I can tell you with the direction is it's going to hinge on that changeup development.
Developing that third pitch has always kind of been the thorn in the side for Max Meyer and his status as a starter, I think, even dating back to his college days, because he was closing at University of Minnesota. Yeah. My takeaways from Thomas White and Noble Meyer, both these guys, very similar body types, very similar structures, big, tall guys, kind of lanky on the mound, high velocity. And it's funny because one throws righty, one throws lefty. So it's like if you're pitching in front of a mirror and then you got your mirror image right there. It's been a terrible season record-wise for the big league club. And there's been a lot of, angst and anguish over not just the record on the field, but like the farm system is dreadful. We have to rebuild it. But you look at these two guys, and elite starting pitching is what ultimately will bring you to the postseason and win championships. And I am really excited to see Thomas and Noble continue to develop. Before we move on to the next section of the top 30 list, where do you think, because like Noble Meyer pitching for Jupiter right now, it looks like he might be ready for an uptick in competition. The numbers right now got a 2.79 ERA. He struck out 32 in 29 innings. Thomas White even has more strikeouts, I believe 37 strikeouts, both with Jupiter. So is it time for them to see a upgrade in competition, maybe go on to Pensacola eventually, or will that be 2025?
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely think both of these guys will see a challenge in competition level before the season is over. I don't know about Pensacola, but definitely Beloit. Okay. I definitely think you'll see both of these guys by season's end pitch for the Beloit Sky Carp. So it was something that was questioned in spring training, why should these guys get pushed right now? I know they talked about it. Noble looked a little bit shaky with the control and command. I'll be honest with you. He looked quite shaky with control and command at times. Thomas White looked very good with control and command over all three of his pitches. So what I would say to you, though, is there's really no reason to rush. You know what I mean? This is a long-term. They're both long-term prospects. They're not guys that are going to contribute tomorrow or maybe even next year. These are guys that are going to be guys that are on the ledger for maybe 2025 to 2026. But no, yeah, I definitely think that they could challenge them shortly to Beloit. And with the pitching depth that Beloit has, I think there's room there to do it. And then when you look up at Pensacola, there's room there as well to maybe either challenge guys there or see what's going on with that. So there's definitely room to challenge them, I think, for sure, to higher levels. But I would say that Beloit is definitely a well-regarded possibility here pretty soon for both of those guys.
A good next step for really the two prizes of the Marlins farm system at this point. Moving on to number 4, we're going to start getting into the offensive side. Number 4, Victor Mesa Jr. Back in, I believe it was 2018, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, when he was signed out of Cuba with his brother, Victor Mesa Jr., or Victor Mesa. And Victor Mesa has been the better prospect by far and is now playing himself, into consideration maybe for a call-up at the end of this season. Like, he continues to hit in AAA.
Yeah, very good. I really like this player. He's fast. He's athletic. He can play all 3 outfield spots. I think he will definitely stick in center field. Did it in Pensacola, where it's sometimes not that easy to hit because of the wind. He's doing it now with the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. Had a really, really good showing for the Marlins in spring training. Really kind of made his case. Stuck around for most of the tenure of spring training. He was there doing it, like, at least for a little while. He was doing it in spring training for the Marlins, at least like halfway through spring. So no, this was really good. It's a lefty hitter. He's athletic, really good bat speed. Knows how to select his pitches, knows how to select his swings pretty well, and is a real personality. So I think this is a guy that the Marlins are really going to like, and is one of few prospects that they have in the organization that is a true center fielder. I think Victor Mesa Jr., the reason why he gets the ranking over Dylan Head is because he's done it a little bit more. He's shown a little bit more in terms of bat to ball skills, and then he's shown a little bit more range than the next guy that we may talk about is Dylan Head. So I really like Victor Mesa Jr. I really think that this guy is going to be very good as a center fielder for the Miami Marlins, and it could be very soon. Honestly, I really don't think it's that far away for this player. So we'll see what they do at the deadline. I know there's questions about Jazz, and there's questions about other guys that they may trade or try to trade, and all of these other things. I don't know about any of that. I have to talk to my colleagues about that, or we'll see what happens when the trade deadline comes around for that. But if there is room, I think Victor Mesa Jr. is a guy that could be up with the Marlins pretty quickly.
It's exciting. It's exciting. Something that I've been tracking is a development of Mesa Jr. The power, is not going to hit 35 bombs, but hit 15, 20 bombs a year. And if that can translate into Lone Depot Park, and, at this point with the rebuild and a farm system kind of starved for offensive talent, that is really encouraging signs as his development in AAA so far. It's definitely something to look forward to. The next guy is a little bit more toolsy. I think where we're going with this. Dylan Head, the headliner of the trade, if you will, from San Diego with the Luis Arias package. Really toolsy guy, extremely fast. A lot of fans were very skeptical, myself included, over a player that was struggling to, maintain consistent contact in the minors so far. Only in single A, only 19 years old. What's kind of the ceiling for Dylan Head at this point?
Yeah, so definitely, like you said, he has room for at least 4 out of 5 tools. I really do think that his speed is going to carry him a very long way. The fact that you see outlets grading him as 80 grade speed is not a grade that outlets hand out very often. And multiple outlets have done this for this guy. Multiple scouts speak so highly of his ability just to run with ease. And you've kind of already seen it in his limited time with Jupiter. So it's awesome to where he's hitting a 95 mile an hour exit velocity, kind of line drive grounder to right field. And he's stretching that into a triple. That's not something that a lot of guys can do. They're settling for maybe a double, maybe even a single if you're not nearly as fast as he is. But he gets a stand-up triple on a play like that. It's just like something that you really don't see from a lot of prospects. So this guy's speed will carry him a very, very long way, as long as he can continue to improve his ability to hit the ball in the air. He's been very, very unfortunate to kind of really pound the ball into the ground. really not come by a ton of lift. It's not that you have to hit home runs every single time you're at the plate, and I don't think Dylan Head is a guy that will ever hit a lot of home runs. But what you do need to do is at least hit line drives to come by those extra bases a little bit easier. And to challenge outfielders as well as infielders. He challenges infielders very well. He needs to challenge outfielders a little bit more. In the outfield himself, arm is, I think, just all right. Route running, I think, needs a little bit of work as well. I do still think he can stick as a center fielder, but the speed will carry him to do that, especially in Major League outfields. I think he has all the speed in the world to cover all the ground possible, but I think his route running and his arm need a little bit of work, whereas Victor Mesa Jr. kind of has that a little bit more because he's more advanced in his career. So high school kid, like you said, Jeremiah, there's tons of time. There's no reason to rush this kid. He's, has this adductor going on right now. Like he could probably be playing today, but the Hammerheads are just like, you know what, we're not going to push him. And there's no reason to push him whatsoever. So I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be fine. And we're going to see what happens with this guy. Cause I think that he's definitely the headliner of the trade. He's the most toolsy guy in the trade. Isn't the most advanced, but we like the original product of what he's done with the Hammerheads, and we're going to continue to see what he does probably for the rest of the year with that team.
Going into a little bit even younger than Dylan Head, number 6 on the list, Luis Cova, actually signed this winter in January. Honestly, don't know too much about him. I'm not sure if you watched him at all or where he is in terms of, it seems like it's all projection at this point with somebody so incredibly young, so far off. Is there, what do you have for Luis?
So what I would say for him, and the reason why he's as high as he is because of physical projection. Like you said, we haven't seen him play yet for the Marlins, but with physical projection at 6'1", 6'2", like 160, 170 in between there. I'm not giving you exact numbers, but in between there already at age 17. You like physical projection out of a prospect that's so young. Yeah. So really what we pin his ceiling on is really good physical projection. And then the ability, of course, to run well as well, and probably have the ability to hopefully stick in center field like these other two prospects that we just talked about. So we haven't seen him play yet, but really has that physical projection that you like to see. He has it at the plate. He has a speed in the field already. And a lot of these players out of such a young age, out of these, like international ranks, they come in, most of them as shortstops or center fielders, and most of them either move off or don't wind up sticking there. I think Luis Cova, with physical projection and good speed, has the ability to stick in center field as a guy that will hit not only for good average, but also for good lift. So we like Luis Cova, and we're going to see what he does when DSL starts.
So just waiting on that portion of the minor league schedule to kick off, transitioning into a little bit of a more advanced prospect, Jacob Marcy, college hitter, professional hitter, I think is how I would describe him. After doing some analysis myself from the Padres trade, really good on base guy, which is, a skill that's going to translate into the major leagues if he can find a role, kind of a fourth outfield projection, if I'd be correct, Alex.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of like safe projection is to project him as a fourth outfielder, but I think he could be a little bit more, honestly, like plays all three spots. And his patience is just so good, man. Like I've labeled him as the most advanced prospect and most polished prospect in the trade, and I will stick to that. I think that is true. Really, really good at selecting pitches from the left-hand side, by the way. So lefty hitter, you always like to see that. Really, really selective from the left-hand side and fast. Like this guy steals bases. Like, I mean, he has like coming to the Marlins, he had like 77 steals. Has played at a different level every single year since he was drafted. He's played at least 2 levels. This year he's been at AA all year so far, but I see definitely a possibility and potential for this guy to get pushed up to AAA pretty soon and contribute to the Marlins sooner rather than later. Maybe September call-up, I'm thinking, for Jacob Marcy if he continues to do what he's doing right now. So really cool, man. A really polished hitter, really patient bat. We're actually going to have him on the podcast on Swimming Upstream here probably this coming week. So I'm excited to talk to him. And also had a pretty turbulent time as a college player. Started playing in 2020, and of course that season gets wiped out. He tried to go to the summer leagues and only played like 2 or 3 games in the summer leagues, and then he redshirted. So There was obviously an injury in there somewhere for him as well, on top of COVID. So it's happened. He's made it happen at a moment's notice, and he's gotten challenged and done really well with challenge. So I really like Marcy. I think he's, like I said, definitely the most polished piece of this return. No slight on Nathan Marcharella, because I think he's good as well. We'll talk about him probably in a little bit. But no, this guy's good, and I think he's going to contribute to the Marlins pretty soon.
You said the most polished piece of the deal. I know this is kind of out of the blue, but if you could think off the top of your head, a hitter like him swinging from the left side, who do you see him as a major league comparison? If you have some.
Of course. I'm always far away on like giving you a major league comparison, because I don't like to get too far too soon. So what I would say to you, without giving you a name, Jeremiah, what I would say to you is that this is a guy that I think has already shown that can continue to walk against plus stuff and select well against plus stuff. So if you can think of a player yourself that selects pitches very well, that hits more for gaps than home runs is what I would say, but is also fast on the bases, that's kind of what you're looking at.
That's great stuff. Moving to number 8 and number 9 now, Xavier Edwards. Really weird case to start the year. Had a bacterial infection in his foot that kept him out all up until, I believe, last week is when he got back on the field finally in game action. And, in terms of, potential major league contribution, Xavier Edwards came up last year and impressed. He hit just a shade under 300, if I remember, 295, obviously with a limited amount of games, but the ability to play the middle infield, some defensive aspects that, could be questioned, if you will, Edwards, but this is a guy that can still contribute and perhaps can be a part of the rebuild and is probably one of the more major league ready guys on this list.
Yeah, for sure. This is a local kid to Broward. I went to North Broward Prep. It's awesome to see it. You hear his teammates talk about it, like Maldonado and Luzardo talk about him as the guy that they played against in high school, which they did, which is amazing. So it's always cool to see a local product make good, right? So it's cool to see him on the Marlins. I'm glad that he's on the Marlins. What I would say overall for Xavier is that he would be on the major league team if not for his injury. So like you said, he has this infection in his foot, which kind of held him out. Really nothing left to prove in minor league baseball. But I do agree with what you said as well, is that he's not a shortstop. I think he's a second baseman. And now with no more Luis Arias around, you kind of have an opening there at second base for this guy to contribute on a regular basis. So I would want to bring this guy up as soon as he's ready. And I would want him to play second base for the Marlins. I think he's good there. I don't think he has the arm to play shortstop. They also tried him out in center field. It was meh. So I think this guy is kind of positionally limited to second base. I don't think he's really a fit for third base or shortstop. I think he's a second baseman, which is fine. You need second baseman and you need guys at second base that are going to hit from both sides. And I think that Xavier Edwards will provide that once he's ready. So I like Xavier, man. I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be fine. And once he's ready, I think he'll be up.
And he can hit, and which is something that a lot of players haven't been hitting, whether that's the minor leagues or in the major leagues. Xavier Edwards can hit. Definitely a bat first guy, I think, contributing for this team moving forward. Excited to see him get called up. I think he definitely gets called up at some point this season, hopefully this summer, towards the end of summer. But I liked what I saw from him last year. So somebody that I'm familiar with, Nathan Marcharella at number 9 out of Salinas, California. Shout out to Salinas. I went to the defense language school for the military in Monterey, California, and Salinas is right there. So Marcharella, big power guy, but kind of struggling in terms of his power output this season. But, a plus hitter, I would say, right, Alex?
Yeah, no, definitely very good. Another lefty, by the way. It's the Marlins get 2 lefties out of the trade. They get Marcharella, and then they get this guy. They get Marcy, and then they get this guy Marcharella. So another lefty hitter. It's kind of been more power stricken last year. With the 19 home runs that he had last year, was a little bit more in the way of power than average. But another guy that the Padres challenged pretty quickly. They've challenged him to a different level every single year. So this is the first year this year that he's only been in Double-A, just like Marcy. These guys have followed a very similar projection path, which is why they're very good friends. So these guys are pretty close. What I would say about Martorella is he's a lot more defensively limited than Marcy. Marcy can play all three outfield spots. This guy's going to be a first baseman. So he kind of does, at a power position, you kind of want to see the power happen. And like you said, Jeremiah, hasn't really happened yet this year for the player, but a 706 OPS, it's still okay. It's not terrible. It's not bad.
Not bad at all.
So, and he's still just 23, so there's time, and he's already in Double-A. So pretty advanced at a still pretty young age to be in Double-A at 23. I think is a good projection path. So yeah, doesn't really strike out a ton. He is actually not terrible with the strikeout rate. So he selects pitches obviously pretty well as well. Not as good as Marcy, but pretty well. And I think the Marlins will be pretty excited to have a lefty hitting first baseman that has more room for power projection on top of what he did last year. So I like Martorella. I think he's going to be fine. I think number 9 is a very fair projection for this player. And I'm excited to see him with the Marlins organization, and we'll see what he can do. I would say next year would be a probably pretty safe path for him to make the major league team.
Awesome. I mean, really quick before we go into the next segment, which will be pitchers, it seems very comforting that the Marlins made this trade. And I wanted to extend Luis Arias, but in terms of the farm system, if you're a farm system guy, it's a comforting feeling to see 3 guys we've mentioned, Marcy, Martorella, and Dylan Head, all with really, solid projections. They might not be perennial all-stars, but really solid projections to contribute. And that's awesome to see in a farm system that if you take these 3 guys away, now you're looking at a completely different top 10, and that they would be really bad.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, obviously the focus is going to be on, producing more in the way of positional talent. They know that they have some guys, we talked about Thomas White. We talked about Noble Meyer. We talked about other guys. We'll talk about other guys briefly, probably here at the end. The Marlins know that they have and can develop pitching. What they don't have and what they have not done is gotten players like this that are pretty advanced offensively. I think Victor Mesa Jr. probably is the only one, or one of the only ones that you'll see in our top 5 to top 10 that is a guy that the Marlins developed themselves, right? So,
Right.
Yeah, for them to bring in offensive talent that's already pretty polished with Marcy, Martorella, Edwards, for them to bring in these kind of players and to see them at the top of the farm system is kind of what they want to do. So it's not that they're going out and getting one guy that they know is going to be a surefire guy. They're going out and getting multiple guys that they think will be good, that they have the trade capital to trade for, like they did with Luis Arias. So they probably could have easily traded Arias as a 1-for-1 for a more star-studded prospect, but they need more than one guy, and that's exactly what they're doing.
And that explains kind of the logic of the trade. The package is accumulating more talent. Quantity is needed, not just quality. And these guys are quality prospects, I believe, but also quantity. But moving on into the next segment of pitchers, we have at number 10, we have Dax Fulton, number 11, Jacob Miller, and at number 12, Carson Milbrandt. So all 3 of these guys still young, still no higher than Double-A. Give me, out of these 3, Dax Fulton, Jacob Miller, Carson Milbrandt, those kind of, if you take away Thomas White, Noble Meyer, Max Meyer, those are like the 3 real studs of the system. Who's your favorite out of these 3?
Wow, so that's a great question. I think right now, my favorite out of these 3 is Jacob Miller, just because of the way he's been able to reinvent himself. We talked about it in spring training with him a lot, how he's been able to kind of reinvent himself, like I just said, turning his 4-seamer into a 2-seamer, and then, of course, making improvements to his breaking stuff, including his slider and changeup. So I really like Jacob Miller, and he's had a fabulous start to the season with Blake. Even in the cold weather climate, which I talked to him about as well. He wasn't that excited about it, but he's done really well, man. A 34-12 strikeouts to walks ratio. He's getting ground balls with that new sinker that he has. So to be able to reinvent yourself as a pitcher at basically a moment's notice, started working on the sinker just this spring and has been very, very good with a sub-4 ERA and good control numbers. I like Jacob Miller a lot. For Dax Fulton, I like that pitcher as well. He looks very much more. The good news that I can give you about Dax Fulton is that during spring training, he was there, he was present, he was doing light drills. But what I would say for him is that he looks way more in shape than he did last spring, which is very, very encouraging for this player to see him conditioned a little bit more properly. What I would say for him, though, is that still going through the recovery from his most recent surgery, which is a second surgery that this player has had. So you worry about the durability. Yeah. If he's out there and if he is good and if he is good to go is what I should say. He does have very good advanced stuff, especially for a pitcher of his age coming out of high school. So I really do like Dax Fulton. I just think the age is what propels him over Jacob Miller. But I think maybe in our next rankings, depending on where Dax is with his recovery, if he's back, is he not? Like, where is he with his recovery? We may have Miller higher because Miller has been very, very good. For Carson Milbrandt, that's the last guy here that you have at number 12. For Carson Milbrandt, the thing for him has always kind of been control and command. He has good stuff. He has good raw stuff, but how is he going to control and command it? This spring, he showed that he can control and command it quite a little bit better. It's played a bit well into the season so far. He's had his ups and downs, I think I would say a little bit for Carson Milbrandt, but you just really, the stuff is there for this guy. He's a mid-90s guy. He's got two to three good secondary pitches that he's working on. I would say his best secondary is probably his changeup. Maybe he'll tell you different, but I really like what I've seen from his changeup. This guy is definitely good and definitely has a wide arsenal if he can control and command it. He started to do it this season and this spring, but he didn't really do it before, which is why he's lower than those other two guys.
All right, good stuff. Dax Fulton out of Oklahoma just a few years ago, but I think the Tommy John is really what kind of set him back a little bit. So obviously hoping for the recovery there. And Jacob Miller is a guy that I also have been following and really liking. I think, obviously not the ultimate prospect guy like yourself, but just looking at if I had an underrated starter, perhaps with the way the Marlins develop pitching, it would be Jacob Miller. I could see him definitely ascend on this list as well. Moving quickly touch on Troy Johnston. At this point, there really isn't a ton to say. I think organizationally, it seems like the Marlins just don't believe in him, in part because he's been blocked at first base, DH, defensively limited. Didn't protect him in the Rule 5 draft. But just give me a quick thought on Troy Johnston before we move on.
Yeah, been a bit of a rough start too for him. Obviously, like you just said, the reason that he wasn't selected in the Rule 5, which I think came as a surprise to a lot of people just based off his great success that he had last year where he almost OPS'd 1,000. It was a 948 OPS, and then he doesn't get selected. So I think it was surprising to a lot of us that he did not get selected. I know there were teams interested, but he did not get selected. And I think a lot of it is what you're saying is like if you're going to put a guy at first base, you're going to want to know that it can kind of permeate to Major League Baseball. And I don't think any of the other 29 teams were willing to take that chance. Whereas with Nasim Nunez, who did get selected, at least, he has a standout tool with his defense and run tool. Whereas with Johnston, he did steal bases. He stole 20 plus bases and hit 20 plus home runs. But how much of that was Jacksonville? The hitting atmosphere in Jacksonville is not always difficult. And how much of that is him just being a heady guy that he is and very, very smart baseball player and knowing when to actually go when a guy doesn't check him or when a guy doesn't check, like I said, the guy doesn't check the runner or, you just get out to a certain lead and from there because you know yourself so well that you can steal, which is kind of what he will tell you himself is that he's not the fastest guy in the world, but he knows if he gets to a certain point, he can get the base. And that's kind of what he did with Jacksonville. This year with Jacksonville, it's been a little bit of a struggle for him. I think that the International League has adjusted to him quite a bit. And he's not doing very well so far this season, but he is known as a slow starter. So I wouldn't put it past Troy Johnston to put the slow start past him and get off to a good middle to end of the season and be up with the Marlins at some point. I do think that the Marlins, once they make more moves and once there is more space open, if they can trade guys like Josh Bell, I don't know if they'll be able to trade Josh Bell with his contract, but if they can trade Josh Bell, he gets traded. Johnston's the obvious guy to come up and play first base. And he's actually the one thing I want to point out about him is the one thing that he's done very well this year is play defense. And first base is a position that he just learned 2 years ago. So very encouraging to see him play really good first base. He's laying out. He's an all-out player. Like, he gives you his heart, man. It's so cool. A great guy, a great dude, and I hope he gets his chance here. I think he will this season. I think he'll be with the Marlins this season at some point.
I've been one of the top, guys on Marlins Twitter overall, just saying, give Johnson a shot. Like, give him a chance. Let him prove what he can do. And if he goes down and he can't do it, so be it. But at least give him a shot, give him a chance. I was a little upset they didn't protect him in the Rule 5 draft. Luckily, nobody took him. But you mentioned slow start. But in a rebuild season, there's bound to be more moves, more DFAs. Really hoping that he gets a shot to get some playing time in Miami. Let him see what he can do. A couple more younger guys, Yiddy Cape and Andres Valor. Both these guys still very young. Yiddy Cape definitely seemed to be a very hyped prospect last season. Seems to drop a little bit now. Not very familiar with Andres Valor. Give me your breakdown on those guys.
Yeah, sure. So for Capet, it's just physical projection. He was this young, wiry little kid when he came into the league, and he still is this young, wiry kid today. So, this is going on 2 years now. We just really haven't seen the physical projection that we need from Yiddy Cape. You also see him start to make the transition from shortstop to third base, which I do think will be his future home. I don't think he has the defensive skill set to play shortstop. I think he will be a third baseman. And if you play third base, you really have to have that power projection kind of come to fruition sooner rather than later. And for Capet, it just has not been there. Last year was just such a struggle for him with his long swing. His swing was just so long, which is what contributed to him striking out at a very, very high rate. And we really haven't seen it really get fixed yet this season. So in our rankings here, we had him previously, I think, at number 9 or 10, and now he goes to number 14, and those are the reasons why. So the biggest crux for Yiddy Cape will be his physical projection, and in what he does with physical projection. I do still think he can play second base. I do still think, though, that his future home should be third base, because I do think if the physical projection does happen, he can hit for power and be able to man the spot. So I do think that Capet will be a third baseman eventually, but he's not that right now, and that's why he's at number 14 rather than number 9. For Valor, really young kid. This guy is a guy that we're just now getting to know. Has shown really, really well with his physical projection. So kind of the opposite of Capet. Andres Valor is this really, really built tall kid. He's like all legs, and he gets his legs really involved into his offensive approach. So we really like Valor for his ability to get his physical attributes introduced into his offensive game right now. Where I think we're a little low is on his defensive ceiling. I don't think he will stick as a center fielder. I think this guy will be manned at the corners or possibly DH spots. So I think his defense does need a little bit of work, which is why he lost 3 spots in our most recent rankings, because I think his defense needs work. That's Andres Valor, but still tons of time. And this guy's 18, 19 years old. There's still tons and tons of time. He is with FCL, so he's coming stateside this year. We're going to see how he does the rest of the year. That's Andres Valor. And then third guy on your list was John Cruz. So John Cruz, another super, super young kid. Marlins just got him in the trade with the Yankees. It's been a real struggle. I won't tell you lies. This guy has really struggled with full season Jupiter. Very long swing. I think his swing is very immature. When he does make contact, he can make loud contact, which is great. But his offensive approach needs some serious, serious work. I think if he does the work needed with his swing to come by a little bit less uppercut, try to force power a little bit less, and select his pitches and swings a little bit better, he will be very, very good. There is very good raw tools here, which is why he's as high as 16, because he has a very high raw power tool. He has a very high raw hit tool, but it's just so raw right now. So I think that's why he comes in at 16 versus higher.
You mentioned the long swing. Is that something like from what you've watched of him, because acquired from the Yankees in the John Birdie trade, is that something that you've seen like him just have trouble catching up to like fastballs, like good heat?
Yeah, really it is. I mean, guys just really pound him out of the strike zone too, is what I would say. So he's trying to force swings out of the zone as well. So I really don't think that his vision and discipline are good at all. which is kind of the struggle. And then when he does swing, he's trying to force power a little bit too much. Needs to be a little bit more natural. He's got raw, natural physicality. He needs to play into his raw ability versus trying to force something that he's not. I think he's kind of, as 18-year-olds do, he's trying to be a player that he's not right now, and that's kind of what's led to his struggles in strikeout rate.
Number 17 on the list is a guy, the first guy we've seen since Max Meyer that has really contributed for the Marlins this season, making his major league debut. Bullpen guy, was lights out in Jacksonville. Had some success with the big league clubs first time around, but he, for my understanding of it, just threw his slider way too much. Just watching him, just so dependent on the slider. I think we were talking about like 70-75% usage during his last outing. Overall, a talented arm, and then we have Patrick Monteverdi. Monteverdi is a guy that the stats are there, the production has been there over the span of his career in the minor leagues, but his stuff just won't play up for the major leagues. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, so for Maldo, the first thing I would say is that I did not agree with him getting sent down recently. I think he should have been able to work his issues out at the major league level, especially for the Marlins. So I didn't really like to see him get sent down. I think that the Marlins had a couple of other candidates that they could have sent down, including Anthony Bender, who has minor league options, who has had more of a leash at the major league level. So I would have liked to see Maldonado stick around, but I think that you're right. And what you're saying is that I think he's been too slider heavy. That is his best pitch. Far and away his best pitch, by the way, is his slider. What he did do is that I can tell you with his fastball is that he also kind of turned it into more of a two-seam sinker. So he was more traditional four-seam. He still doesn't really grip the pitch as far as I'm aware. He doesn't really grip the pitch as traditional two-seam, but it has two-seam action versus that more, four-seam ride. So it has more of sinking action on the fastball that he has versus that four-seam ride. I don't think that's what he wants the fastball to do. I just think that's what it's naturally doing. So I don't think he's very comfortable with his fastball. I really don't think he's very comfortable with the fastball in the current state that it's in, which is why you saw him go more slider. Yeah. Right. So I really don't think he's all the way comfortable with where the break is and the ride and run is on his fastball. He doesn't want it to be a sinker. It's just naturally doing that. And that's something that he worked on in spring training and he's still working on now. So to send him down to get that worked out, I think is smart, but I think that's something he could have worked out at the major league level with Mel rather than at the minor league level. So again, I think that as this guy progresses and as he gets a little bit older and a little bit more mature at the AAA and major league level, his fastball, you'll see his fastball start to change into more of what he wants. And I think he'll be even better. But I do think that that's the reason that he went more slider heavy. For Monteverde, it's a lefty. I think for this guy, he had a great start last year with the different baseball that they were using in AA. This season, it didn't really hurt him late in the season. I don't think. I mean, he did have a lot of more elevated numbers when it came into the second portion of the season. But from what he's saying, it wasn't really what he's told me. It wasn't really the baseball. It was just more the innings that he got. So I think what you're saying is kind of accurate that I think it's more of a back end starter ceiling or maybe a guy with a 2 to 3 inning bullpen ceiling. I do think that this guy has a high floor as a guy that will contribute to the Marlins this season. I do think that he will. He's very mature. But he really doesn't have that one huge standout thing. He doesn't have the high velo. Right. He doesn't have the really huge breaking stuff. He doesn't have the big size. He's just kind of that kind of role player that you need, right? And
kind of like Dan Castano. Remember Dan?
Yeah,
Castano?
Exactly.
Like
yeah. I think that's a fair comp. If you want to come up with one, I think that's a fair comp to what he could be. Hopefully, he'll be a little bit more. I think on this Marlins team, he'll be a back end guy. If he's not a back end guy, he'll be a guy that is a multiple inning reliever.
Okay. Double digit or moving from the teens now into the 20s, finishing out at 19, Juan De La Cruz, very, very young guy. Again, probably easier to just chalk this up to physical projection still, just based on his age and the amount of starts he's had so far.
Yeah, 6'3", 180 already at age 19. That's crazy physical projection. And he's already pumping fastball to like almost triple digits. Like I've seen this guy reach 98, 99. Really good, but also really, really raw, right? In terms of control and command. So he definitely needs to improve with control and command. This season so far has been really, really good. He came back to the FCL Marlins. They put him back in the FCL. I think he could have started with Jupiter, but they put him back in the FCL, whatever. They give him a little bit more time and extended. That's fine. But so far with his 2 starts, it's been little innings. He's only gone like 3 and 4 innings in these starts. So it's not really that many innings. But you kind of see what this guy can do with velocity is crazy velocity, very good velocity, and a staple curveball that I think is going to be his best secondary pitch. So with the velocity mix from his potentially triple-digit fastball all the way down to like a power curve in the 80s, like mid-80s, this guy's going to be pretty damn good. The organization is really excited about him. I think the only reason that he lost spots is because we had to include guys over him, but it's no slight on him. This guy's going to be damn good, and the organization likes him a lot.
And then Will Banfield, a guy that has been in the system for 6 years, since 2018, kind of broke out last season offensively, but this season it seems he's regressed back to the mean. We're going to talk about him and Joe Mack, but in a system that hasn't seen a catcher come up through the ranks since really JT Realmuto. At this point, is Will Banfield a guy that you see contributing for the Marlins major league team in a way, or is he still limited to that defensive catcher projection that we all had him?
Yeah, so obviously last year was the breakout season, like you said, but I mean, he still didn't light the world on fire in terms of his on-base numbers, and that's because of his lack of walks. This guy does not walk at all. And he attacks very early in counts because those are the best pitches that you get, which is understandable. He tells himself, hey, if I see a pitch that I'm going to be able to hit, I'm going to take that pitch. That's kind of been his MO. That's kind of what led to his success last year with what he did, especially with his power numbers to hit what did he hit? 20 plus home runs, 22, 23 home runs, I think he hit. So, yeah, he's attacking early in counts, but how is that going to play up to Major League Baseball? I think his patience is something that really is holding him back. Defensively good, very good. He was known defensively as a very good defensive catcher coming out of high school. He still is now. Guys like throwing to him. He handled the baseball change in Double-A with no problem. It was totally fine, and he calls guys really, really, really well. He was calling major league pitchers in spring training for almost all of camp. So I think the Marlins still like him. He's definitely a catcher. He's definitely a guy that will stick as a catcher. But I think in terms of what you're asking, is he a starter or is he a backup? At this point, I mean, just with this slow start, I mean, he's still just 24, so still time. But I think the safe projection would be that he would be a backup catcher right now.
Okay. And I mean, we'll get to Joe Mack, but which of those guys are you more higher up on personally?
So it's so hard because they're actually both following a similar projection path.
Right.
Whereas Mack's offense just now took off as well, or starting to take off now with Double-A. So it's so hard. It's so hard to kind of place them on a same trajectory path, but they both have very similar skill sets. So yeah, I think Banfield is further ahead, obviously, because of when he was drafted and when he got here. But I think they're pretty similar players, honestly, in my opinion.
And now the ultimate disappointment we have to go over in terms of the Marlins drafting and developing Jacob Berry, all the way down to 21 on the Fish on First list. I tweeted out earlier, hitting 141 in Double-A, and that's with over 140 at bats. Jacob Berry, we got to chalk it up. He's a bust.
Yeah, just hasn't happened, honestly, and we have to call it out for what it is, honestly. Like Jacob, he's a super nice guy, but you can see that we grade him as a DH because he has no defensive home. The Wahoos are trying to, or the Marlins with the Wahoos are trying to put him in right field, which has been a little bit of a turbulent process. We know that he has a decent arm, but the accuracy of his arm is just so bad. And then when he's at third base, I think he holds the arm back because he doesn't really understand where the ball is going when he throws the ball to first base. Really tough to see that a guy with no defensive home at all. Definitely not a third baseman. I think he's a first baseman / DH ultimately. And if you have the offensive output that he has had lately, where he's hitting 141 right now so far with double A, it's just not happened for this player who's 23 years old. He still has time. I'm not completely out on the fact that he could realize his potential, because in college he was just such a great bat to ball guy. It's just been so far and away the opposite with Major League Baseball, and that is definitely something that we recognize at Fish on First and something that we're going to call out. So he's at 21 for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Marlins missed on that draft, missed on him. And it's tough. I mean, you hope you see him turning around, but you gotta call a bust a bust. And at this day and age, with the Marlins farm system as it is, to see a guy that, drafted that high at number 6 and just completely inept offensively, without any position defensively, it's a disappointment for sure. Number 22 and 23, we have Josh Simpson, left-hander, and then Yancory De La Cruz. No relation to Brian De La Cruz, but Josh Simpson, I believe, has already made his major league debut. Is he injured? Don't really know too much about him.
So not yet for major league debut is number
Okay.
1. But what would have been if he didn't get injured? So 60-day IL right now. I think he has an arm injury to his throwing arm. He's a lefty. This is a guy who has always been a damn good reliever. Very, very good, actually. Not oversized, not blow it past you, nothing like that. But just a guy that has established 3 to 4 pitches. Very, very good, and can dot pitches as well when he's at his best from the left-hand side. So I think that the reason that you see him sink this far in our rankings, he had a really good spring training, start to spring training before he got injured. Skip Schumacher was raving about this guy, especially about his breaking stuff, that this guy's breaking stuff is some of the best that he's seen. I think he definitely would have challenged for a spot on the opening day roster if he did not have the setback with injury. So it sucks to see this guy get hurt. He's done everything necessary to earn his shot out of the bullpen, and when he gets healthy, I think you'll see him. So yeah, I like Josh, but with the injury, we kind of have him a little bit lower just because it's a reliever. He's relief only. He's not going to start or anything like that, but he could go potentially 2 to 3 innings out of the bullpen. He's done it at times. But man, his control and command over 3 to 4 pitches is very, very good, especially with his breaking stuff. Curveball is really good. So yeah, this guy's good. Also has an established changeup and a decent fastball. So I like this guy. I really like Josh Simpson, and I think he'd be on the major league team if he wasn't injured. For Yancory De La Cruz, Yancory De La Cruz is a guy that the Marlins got out of the international ranks just recently, not too long ago, but had a really, really, really solid showing. Another lefty, by the way, another lefty hitter. So we're talking about lefty, and then lefty with Simpson on the mound, and then lefty with Yancory. 18 years old. Last year, just really, really, really good last year with a 360 on base percentage and 394 slug. Really good initial output from Mr. Yancory. The one thing that he did, I would say, a little bit too much to strike out. He had 61 strikeouts, 35 walks, which isn't terrible, but in the short season ranks, and how that could matriculate up through the system, you kind of worry about swing and miss a little bit with him. I think he's a little bit too aggressive. So I want to see him be a little bit more patient, especially against right-handed pitching. That's where you got to make your marks, right? So I also think that he wasn't too great against lefties. So again, it's a guy that needs to kind of just mature, right? And he's going to be totally fine. With Yancory De La Cruz, definitely has the ability to stick in center field as well. I would say probably, though, for Yancory is the speed is just okay. So you may worry about him being able to cover ground. So maybe he's a little bit more of a fit for the corners. So probably I would say to myself, more of a corner guy than a center field guy, but that's totally fine. And maybe he proves me wrong and sticks in center field. We like Yancory. We've only seen just a little bit. Want to see the on base matriculate through the system and a little bit less in the way of strikeouts, but good, very good. And I'm excited to have him where we have him.
That's positive. Anytime there is a young, projectable, outfielder, infielder, anybody that swings a bat at this point for the Miami Marlins organization, that's positive. It's good to hear.
And physical projection, like I said too, as well. He's already almost 200 pounds at age 18. You like the physical projection. So with the physical projection and limited speed, I would say he's more of a corner guy than a center field guy, but that's totally fine as long as he improves those on base numbers a little bit more.
And Fabian Lopez, infielder, another guy not too familiar with. I'll let you take this one. We touched on Joe Mack. But Fabian Lopez, is he a middle infield guy or third base? What do we have here?
Yeah, so middle infield for now for Fabian Lopez. Last year on his break-in with the DSL was spectacular. Actually, probably one of the better guys from both sides of the plate. Switch hitter, by the way. So from both sides of the plate, very, very good. Wound up with a 732 OPS. And if you know the DSL, it's not that easy to hit for a ton of power in that environment. And the guy put out 4 bombs, which is great. So you see more physical projection as well. 18 years old, already 165 pounds at 6 feet tall. So you see even more physical projection here for a guy that hits from both sides of the plate. So really excited about Fabian Lopez. Where does he stick ultimately as an infielder is your big question. And I think that's a really good question. It's tough because we've only seen so little. I mean, this year as well, he's gotten off to a slow start this year, by the way, stateside with FCL, but it's only been 39 at bats. So small sample. I'm not putting anything into that. Honestly, I think they could use to take more pressure off of him by moving him off of shortstop. I think that he could probably use to go to a lesser stress position, maybe like second base or third base, is what I would say for Fabian. But in the DSL, he played at second base, but they've mostly put him at shortstop. So apparently they want him to stick at shortstop. I think long term, though, he may move off and go to second or third base.
See, that's the thing that I've seen breaking down this system is the amount of guys who are projected to grow out of shortstop to switch to second based on arm strength, or we're better fitted at third base for you. So that is kind of a testament to the poor development overall of, it's no fault of these players, but the Marlins haven't had a bona fide, you're a shortstop through and through guy, and that's something that I'm looking forward to hopefully changing soon.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, this guy shows some raw tools at shortstop as well, so maybe he can be the guy. It's not impossible for him to stick at shortstop. I just think that you want to develop his bat first and foremost, because this guy has true potential as not only a 4 average guy, but I think he has some really good power on the bat as well. So I think that, if it doesn't work out for him at shortstop in his early years, he could move off. But it happens a lot with these young prospects, especially coming out of the DSL, FCL. A lot of these guys, especially at the international ranks, they get them and they sign them as either center field or shortstop, and it winds up that they go somewhere else. It's just a natural thing that happens. Those positions aren't for everyone, especially if you want to develop offense, if they don't have the extreme raw tools necessary to stick at those positions. I think Fabian has some of them, but I think that potentially he could move off to either second or third base.
Okay. Talked about Joe Mack. Any other notes before we move on from Joe Mack that you want to put out there?
No, really good start though. This guy has come in and kind of proved a lot of us wrong in terms of his ability to hit the baseball. Last year was just not good at all for Joe Mack, and it happens with catchers that sometimes they just catch fire out of nowhere. And Joe Mack kind of did it this year, and he's hitting 275 right now with an 813 OPS. He's one of the best hitters with Pensacola. And he's been really good. Started with Beloit. They moved him to Pensacola, and it's matriculated well for him. But some of his success, or a lot of his success, I guess I should say, to be honest, was with Beloit. With Pensacola, it's been a little bit lower, but still not terrible. He's still hitting over where he was last year with Pensacola, which is the highest level that he's played at. So I think Mack is learning how to hit AA pitching. I think he's done decent so far, especially in terms of a catcher. That's just now, like I said, getting used to AA. He's had a couple big hits. He's got a couple home runs, and he's damn good behind the plate. So I think Joe Mack in our next rankings after this, I think he'll probably go up, honestly, especially if he continues doing what he's doing right now. So I like Joe Mack. He's kind of come back into our hearts, I guess I should say, for this player who some of us were out on. I was never completely out, but he was at the bottom end, 25, 26, 27 in my rankings. I think he'll probably go higher in our next rankings if he continues to hit well.
That's good. I mean, at this point, like I said, Mack and Banfield, the two catchers really focused on in the minor league system. 275 this year is great. Somebody that was drafted fairly high in the supplemental round. So defensive first, but still young, out of high school, still so much growing to do and developing. Another guy we're going to get into as we approach the end of the list, just wrapping it up here. Javier Sanoa continues to hit in AAA, just flat out hitter. He'll slap the ball. Not a big guy, not a power guy, but certainly somebody that is, producing in AAA. And at this point, you love to see production.
Yeah, you got it right. This guy just continues to hit, and he's so young, playing at AAA already, and he was literally at Marlins spring training for the entire thing, just taking it in, soaking it in. We interviewed him with at the breakout game. Just happy to be there, and a super cool guy out of Venezuela. That really is just that slap hitter that does not strike out at all. Just does not strike out. Makes the most of his opportunities and is pretty damn quick on the bases. I really like Javier Sanoa. I don't think he should be at 26. I think he's going to be very much higher in terms of when we come by our next rankings, because this has continued for him. He's continued to hit the baseball for average and get on base. And he knows his craft. He knows himself. He knows he's not a guy that's going to go up there and hit a ton of home runs. But he's also come by a couple of line drives as well that come off the bat at 100 plus miles an hour. So it's awesome. And there's even more room to go. I mean, he's not a finished product yet at all, and definitely a true center fielder. I think he definitely will stick in center field if the Marlins want to put him there, but he also plays like 17 other positions. So This guy can play literally wherever you want. He's easy to get into games. He's a manager's dream. And this guy's going to be he's going to make an impact on the Marlins very soon. I would say pretty damn soon. 2025 opening day, this guy could be on your bench at least, for sure.
Wow. Is there a reason, though, Alex, he's this low on the list? Based on, I would assume it's because of the lack of other tools, besides just the hit tool. Would I be correct in that?
Yeah, so it's hit tool over everything. Right. And then defensive flexibility as well puts him on here, but it's zero power. Zero.
He doesn't hit home runs at all.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not saying he's going to become Luis Arias, but Luis Arias doesn't hit for power either, right?
Exactly. So I think power is one of those stats where you look top to bottom through the system. Yeah, you have projected power, but if you're hitting the ball and you're getting on base and you're hitting 296 in AAA or whatever, that's good. That's positive. Yeah. I'll take that every day. Yeah, I will take that.
I would say also one other thing to mention about him is quality contact kind of is what kind of made him this low. He hits the ball, he gets the bat on the ball, which is why he doesn't strike out. But some of his weakness kind of lies in the ability to catch barrels. So when he's not catching barrels, he doesn't have the greatest bat speed in the world, I wouldn't say. So he lets the ball get deep, which is great. He views pitching very, very well, which is great. But sometimes when he swings, it's more of a last-minute swing, and the bat speed can kind of fall off and lead to a potential single turning into a ground out. So I would say bat speed is also a little bit of a struggle for Sanoa. If he improves bat speed, though, and can continue to let the ball get deep and view the ball as well as he does, and hit for a little bit more in the way of exit velocity. Exit velocity is what I would look at for Sanoa. Not home runs, not doubles or triples. Look at his exit velocity. That is definitely a telling sign about where this player is going to go.
Right, seeing the exit velocity and the bat speed go up is going to translate into a better batting average with balls in play. If and when he makes the major leagues, you're going to see better pitching, and ultimately better defenses. So for lack of a better term, cheap hits aren't going to be available for a guy that's no power. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Emmett Olson, we're going to go Emmett Olson and then Jose Castro, 27 and 28 before we wrap it up. Emmett Olson with Beloit, left-hander, another left-hander, second to last pitcher, I believe, on this list. But yes, second to last pitcher. What do you have to say about Emmett Olson, who is projected to be a starter and is starting?
Yeah, so Emmett Olson, another sizable lefty. Yeah, is kind of what you see here out of this Marlins system with pitching. Really good. I really like this pitcher in terms of the way that he's come on this year. Not a guy that we really had in mind as a guy that we were going to name in our preseason rankings, but with what he's done earlier this year, he's kind of opened some eyes. Fourth round draft pick from last season, and he's kind of come into his own here. Just 22, so he's not pitching that far over his age with or he wasn't pitching that far over his age with Jupiter, and is now pitching right at his age or just about right at his age with Beloit. And he really earned that call up. So with the Hammerheads, he came in and just shut guys out, just didn't allow an earned run at all through his first 16 innings pitched. And that kind of opens your eyes, right? Then he goes to Beloit, and in 16.1 innings pitched right now, he's allowed a total of 2 earned runs. So just a guy with some really good stuff. It's not blow it by you. I don't think it's really that much of blow it by you. I think it's more in deception for this guy. He has kind of that high arm slot, shortens the distance to the plate, and really just fools guys with his north to south on his breaking stuff. Can also place the fastball high in the zone as well to change eye level even more. So changes eye levels really well. He's up to like 93, 94, usually sitting thereabouts with some damn good breaking stuff. He's got 2 good breaking pitches. So I like Emmett Olson. He's really come into his own immediately as a starting pitcher. And I do think he has the stamina to stick as one. So I like Emmett. He's been really good, man. And he's done nothing to discount him at all yet whatsoever. So really good start to the year. We'll see how it's
like the earned runs you mentioned and the fastball velocity, it's not super low. Like if he was, 2 earned runs with an 89, 90 mile an hour fastball,
right.
Okay, yeah, I'd question that. But, if he's consistently hitting 93, 94, that not only you can see hopefully more projection as he continues to add strength with, and more mechanics with the pitching coaches, like that's a real positive, especially with a guy who's only in high A ball. Is there, as we kind of break this down, is there a chance he goes to Pensacola at the end of this year, or is that a 2025 thing?
I would say probably more of a 2025 thing, to be honest with you. He's still just 22, and he has the levers under control right now, but how are you going to keep your levers under control when you go through your first full major league or pro season, I should say, right? So maybe he could get out of whack, maybe he could start losing it. It's a lot of moving parts for a guy that's 6'4", 230, right? So there's a lot of moving parts. You want to keep those moving parts under control. No real rush. Let him work it out in Beloit, and then next year to start, if he continues to succeed, maybe a small cup of coffee with Pensacola. I wouldn't be against it. But I would say the rest of this year will probably be spent with the Sky Carp.
Okay, and 28-29, Jose Castro down in the DSL, another really young guy. And then Mark Coley II, Rhode Island, product of University of Rhode Island, who's really impressed this season. And I believe this is his first time on the top 30 list, was not on the Major League Baseball pipeline. But Jose Castro, Mark Coley, one young, one guy, a little bit older. Any positives, negatives for these guys?
Yeah, sure. So for Coley, really awesome, amazing start to his season, and then he got injured. And it's kind of been less since he's been back from his injury. So hopefully he's back at 100%. But an outfielder, most likely a corner guy, maybe DH. Pretty good bat speed to this guy, and works counts pretty well, I would say, for Mr. Coley. At least early this year he did. But we were just impressed by his ability to come out, like you said, a cold weather school in Rhode Island and kind of just make it work immediately. So we gave him a ranking at 29 with hopes that he would go up. But it's been a little bit of a struggle here lately since he's been back from injury. So we'll see what happens with Mr. Coley. He was also injured a little bit, I believe, in spring training. So it's kind of been a little disconnected. So ability to stay healthy, we need to see that permeate. For Castro, this guy's another corner outfielder, another guy with long levers. We were just talking about guys with long levers. This guy's got pretty good size and really, really, really solid raw power. We haven't seen him play yet. That's just there's scouting reports out of him being taken by the Marlins in the international signing period. So excited about him and his ability to show it as a guy with that size projection that we talked about a couple of times with other guys that can play all 3 outfield spots. So I like the makeup of Castro. We just got to see him play before we put him any higher than 28.
And to wrap things up, Alex, we got Josh Eknes, number 30 on the list with the Beloit Sky Carp. Josh Eknes, take it away, right-handed pitcher.
Yeah, so Josh Eknes, reliever. I think he earns this ranking. Eli doesn't like to rank relievers too terribly much, but I think this guy earns it. I think Simpson earns it as well. So yeah, this guy was another 2023 draft pick. Another pretty sizable guy, also 6'4", 200 plus, right-hander, and he's got some pretty good velo. Sits in the mid 90s, with a decent makeup on his changeup and then a good slider. So I like Josh Eknes. He's missed bats all year. He has a 1.96 ERA and a 0.87 WHIP. So we like Eknes as a guy to rank here. He's struggled a little bit amidst his call up to Beloit. He's actually allowed runs quite a bit, but it's only 5 innings so far, so he's got time. So I'm not placing too much in the way of that. What I would say for him is he was pitching under his age with Jupiter, and now he's pitching more to his age and struggling a little bit to start, but time to fix it. You're playing at a new level. So you got to get used to the weather. That's number one in Beloit. You got to get used to a couple of other aspects there when you're pitching at a little bit of a higher level. So if you can adjust back to pitching at a higher level, I think this guy is pretty good. He's a 1 to 2 inning guy. I think he'll be fine as a guy that can provide innings at some point for the major league team. So I think Eknes earns his spot here as well.
All right, and that will do it for the top 30 prospects breakdown. Last question, Alex, before we get out of here. I'm going to give my favorite underrated prospect from this list, and I'll hear from yours. First off, mentioned it earlier, but I'll mention him again, Jacob Miller at number 11. Jacob Miller, right-handed pitcher. I think with the way the Marlins develop starting pitching and the way you've seen him develop at just, I believe, 20 years old, just drafted recently, you're going to see some good things from this kid. Miller is somebody, I think he's going to project to be a really good starter, maybe a good solid number 2 down the road for Miami. Tons of projection for him, but who's your underrated star to keep a lookout for?
Damn, you took mine. How dare you? No, I'm just kidding. I would have said him, but because you said him, I will go with Andres Valor. I really like Andres Valor with the physical makeup that he's showing at such a young age and his ability to naturally come by power and play all 3 outfield spots. I will say, on top of Miller, who I really like, I would say Andres Valor would be a guy that I would really look at, who really impressed the Marlins and me, Kevin, and Eli in spring training, and Isaac as well in spring training, as a guy that could be the next best offensive prospect for the Miami Marlins. I think it would be Andres Valor.
Awesome. Great stuff, Alex. Great stuff. I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. Extensive episode today, breaking down the top 30 Marlins prospects from Fish on First. And for all you listeners out there, follow the podcast, subscribe, and go check out Alex Carver and his stuff, what he does on Twitter with Marlins minors. Great stuff. Like, it is the number one resource I utilize, and probably everybody, all Marlins fans utilize for Marlins minor league content, highlights and all that analysis. So Alex, great stuff. What you do, man. I appreciate it again for you coming on the podcast.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. You guys do a great job here on the show, and I was glad to be a part of it. Thanks for having me.
All right. And with that, let's go fish.